Yo, what's up? It's your boy, sir. And my therapist told me that I should make like a 10-minute video essay. Yeah, so we finna do that, right? This is my first time doing this. I'm not trying to encroach on other creators or anything like that. Look, I'm just me, and I'm probably gonna be wrong on a lot of this stuff. Most of you is probably not even gonna watch this. That being said, yeah, I don't care. I'm probably gonna turn off the comments anyway. Yeah. I'm not used to the whole stating my opinions on media much and like leaving it out there. I'm lying. I'm a podcaster. But I do that all the time. So let's talk about it. So in therapy, one of my most recent sessions, we discussed perception. Macro, micro, macro, micro. Large picture, smaller picture, right? And it's important that you're able to do both when dealing with anxiety, right? Because what I discovered through talking with him, a lot of my anxiety is due to issues with control, thoughts on control, things I can control, things I can't. It pretty much triggers me into doing things that can be viewed as harmful. And so we got to talking and comparing characters that we identify certain traits with. And a few of them came to mind, but I only had time for one because, they're not free. Sessions are not free at all. Shout out to insurance. But one of the characters that I didn't get to talk about that we're going to discuss today is Bishop from Juice. A lot of you have seen the movie Juice, a lot of you probably have not. So let's get into the background of what Juice is first. We'll talk about the film, I'll give you a breakdown of it, and I'll let you know what I really think about it. Because back in the day, Juice was my favorite crime drama. And now, believe it or not, through the writing of this script for this, I've come to the conclusion that the ending that you know and love of Juice was pretty meh. It was pretty lackluster. And that's only because I discovered something. And we'll get to that at the end. So let's talk about it. My thoughts on Juice endings being kind of meh, kind of lackluster. So I think when you think of black film in the 90s, there was awfully like a bevy of content out there. There was movies for different genres. Black horror became a thing. That's how you got like Tales in the Hood. Uh, you started to get a little bit more of us being the forefront, right? That's how we even got Juice. This was, for all intents and purposes, Lassane Crook's breakout debut. And you might have heard me say that and be like, well, who the fuck is that? That's Tupac's legal name, right? Well, it was his legal name before his mom changed it. But this was his breakout film. A lot of people don't know, and regrettably, I didn't know until I watched Tupac Resurrection, his postmortem documentary, that Tupac was a theater kid. Yeah, that's how he met Jada Smith. Yeah, they were classmates. So that being said, realizing that he was a theater kid who loved acting, was into the arts, very flamboyant, and that's how we got this character. Now, let's get into the background of 1992, right? So, back around the 90s, it was like a shifting of the landscape. So, coming off the 70s, we had like a really big focus on like horror movies and the supernatural. And then in the 80s, brought in a more shift to like futuristic, going into movies like Alien and things. So, the early 90s and late 80s saw rise to transitional properties, IPs. That's how you got your Terminators, your Aliens, your Predators. All of those kind of stem from like an evolution of where media was going to go. And the same thing happened for black film, where back in the day we had movies like Kool High, how we had Do the Right Thing, And in the early 90s, this director you may have heard of, I don't know, may or may not, is go by the name of Spike Lee. Well, Spike Lee had worked really close with this cinematographer uh, on a few projects. His last I kind of think there was like five of them. But there's a gentleman who pretty much shot majority of the big stuff you remember from Spike Lee from like the 1980s up until the early 90s, right? And that gentleman's name is Ernest R. Dickerson, right? So Ernest was a cinematographer who did a few videos, shot a few things for Spike Lee, and then he got a gig. He got this idea. He wrote down the script, him and another gentleman, and he directed this film for Paramount, and it was called Juice. Now, Ernest Dickerson is a black man, right? Which is surprise, you know. But what this movie meant in this time frame of like the early 90s was like the shift of, social commentary of like you had your Huxtables, you had your uh what's the movie with Gary Coleman, Different Strokes and stuff like that, like the happy go lucky. We started to shift towards the like crime drama era, right? This is where you'll probably see, if you're looking back in time, where you see like your Menace to Societies, your New Jack Cities, your Juices. A lot of these came in this era where crime drama was just money. Niggas was just printing money with these movies. And the reason being is because of income disparity, right? So in the 1980s, black family median incomes were somewhere around 12K for the family, 12,000. Meanwhile, for white families, it was around 21K. Now, in the 1990s, black people's, saw some increase. We got moved up to around 20K for median income, whereas the white was 31-ish. So there was a gap still in place. We were doing better, but inflation and discrimination was still prominent. So this was kind of a precursor to the glorification of crime. I hate to say it that way, but that's just what it is. Because when you think about it, if you can't get the jobs that you're searching for, we're still making families. You still got to make ends meet. You got to get it one way or another. And so that became kind of a motivation and a highlight for the 90s. Because in the midst of the cocaine 80s, crack was released out. We weren't doing too hot. The crack epidemic was really affecting everyone. So this gave rise to the awareness being spread through what would be positive messages through black media, through hood films. Juice sought to be one of those. At least to me, that's what I got of it. So the thing about black media reflecting the hard times and the crime like mold is that white Hollywood paid attention that black people were spending dollars, right? So they would lowball the writers, get the film, put it out, and it would do gangbusters, right? It wouldn't do so good critically, but it would become a cult classic. That's how you got this movie. So you might be asking, what made these movies so attractive to us, right? So this again, my perspective. What made this so attractive was the sense of escapism, right? In this time, as you can see, the median incomes, yeah, we had somewhat of a middle class in certain spots, but it wasn't very common for black people. So we wanted to get away. When you see all the negativity, the drugs flooded in the streets, it became a big thing when we started to hear rap artists talk about the things they saw, the environments they were brought in, right? So when those rap artists get a record deal, they put the chains on them, the fresh clothes, they get the music video, they get the women, the money, the power. We see all that and we want that because we see that as an escape, because we feel like if they got that and look at them now, that surely I could covet that for myself, right? And that was a facade that we never got to really see through, at least for majority of people. If you go back in time and look at most of these deals, artists was getting fucked left and right, but we never really discussed that, right? And another thing we never really addressed was the idea that some of these rappers were just simply characters manufactured by a company just to push a product to us so we would buy, right? I liken this honestly to professional wrestling. If you remember the Attitude Era, or even hell, the WCW versus WWE era, we had characters that were larger in life to us, like your Stone Colds, your Rocks, your Triple H's, Goldbergs. Like, it was such a movement and so popular, right? That we started to emulate those things, right? The way they walk, the way they talk, some of their clothing. We started buying into it, right? And I think we started doing that with our own culture. We started buying into the concepts of these characters like Nino Brown, like Bishop, to the point where we started quoting their lines like scripture, right? We even shame people for not even experiencing these movies, right? We threaten to take your black card, your identity, your membership of sorts into being black. The thing about being a young black man back in the days in the 90s where there were certain films and certain media milestones you had to experience in order to be recognized as black. And so what was interesting was we would see these things, but the conversation wasn't being had afterwards. We were just absorbing them as media, and then we would think it's cool, so we would go and emulate it, right? There wasn't enough conversation, at least on my end, where we were discussing, yeah, this villain is charismatic. This villain is achieving some of the things that you want, but in the end, he meets a disastrous fate. And that's honestly upsetting because essentially we view our lives as roller coaster rides. Yeah, it will stop at the end abruptly, but man, enjoy this high while it lasts. And that's quite destructive, honestly. This probably plays into a part where a lot of people don't value their lives, right? But anyway, let's get into the movie because I do want to get into why I think that Juice's ending was kind of shaky, right? But anyway, let's get into the movie, right? This movie follows the story of four black high school friends: Q, Steele, Bishop, and Raheem. Now, the four of them make up a group called Wrecking Q, right? Wrecking Crew, like a little group name. And we all did that in high school. We had little clique names or whatever it may be. However cool you spelled cool with a K or whatever the fuck it was. Everybody had a clique, you know. Well, if you were fortunate to be in a social standing of any sort. That's another topic for another day. But anyway, this clique was named Wrecking Crew. And Bishop was the only one who ever called the crew Wrecking Crew. And he says it once. And it becomes iconic because even though this story is like a cycle to be repeat, you will see how this moment in time of him coining the crew a crew kind of leads to the downfall of it. But anyway, the day starts pretty typical like anybody else. They wake up in the morning for oversleeping. Q getting fussed at for oversleeping. Steele is getting yelled at for not cleaning up his room. And Bishop goes and greets his grandmother, whom he lives with. And he goes into the room and he sees his father in a chair watching television. Not blinking, not moving. He's just there. He almost seems catatonic. All right? Bishop looks distraught and like he wants to say something, but he doesn't know what to say. But he just turns his back and leaves. We go to Raheem, who is playfully like taunting his sister, keeping the bathroom hostage because she needs to get ready for a job interview. And, it's just showing how, in comparison to everybody, Bishop has it worse, right? So Q gets stressed. He takes forever. He apparently is like a sneaker fiend. But he finally gets dressed. He heads out the door. And he walks up on Raheem. Raheem is like the light skinned leader of the group. It's like unspoken, but through the dynamic, you can kind of tell that he's the one leading the crew. So he walks up on Raheem and Keisha. Keisha is Raheem's baby mother, right? The mother of his child. So Keisha is going off on Raheem, saying that she doesn't have time for him because she needs a real man. She wants someone who's essentially not hang around their friends all day so she can have help taking care of the kid, right? And Raheem doesn't take that nicely. He's trying to assure her that he's there for her, that that's his kid too. And she says that she needs a real man, and it triggers him to the point where he calls her a bitch and says he didn't want her anyway, right? And that's what men our age do. We don't know how to handle rejection or our shortcomings being brought to the forefront, so we lash out. Write that down. That will be replaced later. So later on, we move on to Bishop. Bishop is on his way to meet the crew, but he's harassed by a local gangster named Radamez. Radamez accuses him of spreading rumors. Bishop gets cornered up against a store, a little grocery, it's like a little bodega or whatever, and he's being interrogated, like embarrassed by Radamez, and Radamez is addressing his crew, just calling them all out his name, calling them a couple of slurs and shit. And Bishop sees Raheem and Q coming. So Bishop takes that chance of bigging himself up and calls him a maricon. And you can Google what that means, but I'm just going to say it means homosexual, right? So Raheem and Q come up to break it up, like, hey, man, it is, he's crazy. Like, let's just squash it. And Radamez appears to have some sort of respect for Raheem. It's like a leader to leader type respect. Well, he tells him, yo, Bishop, get your boy. He's about to get fucked up. And Raheem is like, look, I handle it, blah, 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 blah. Bishop steps up. And I think it's because he doesn't like the idea of being number two in the group. He doesn't like, he wants to be the leader. He doesn't want to stay under Raheem. And so that's when the term maricon gets brought back up. And Radamez tells him, if you're looking for a homosexual, look no further than your father. I heard that while he was in prison, that he was a prison hoe. And Bishop loses it and starts to fight. Now, the fight gets broken up by the owner of the store that they're fighting in front of, called Quiles. He pulls out a gun. he aims it at him, says, I'll shoot your pee-pee off. And they all run. And so Bishop, Raheem, and Q hit the corner, and Bishop is laughing. And they laugh it off. It's like, yo, Bishop, you crazy, man. And Steele walks up, right? Steele is the portly follower of the group. And he's trying to tell them about how he recently had an intimate moment with a young lady. And I'm not going to say the joke, but they allude to the young lady being trans and that Steele had sex with a trans person. You can go and look up the joke yourself. But anyway, so they leave there, and as they're joking and laughing at Steele, Bishop hugs everybody laughing and says, Wrecking Crew. Remember that. Write that down. It's going to come back. All right, so they go down to the local arcade, and it's run by a character named Trip, who's played by Samuel L. Jackson. Right? Cool, right? Sam Jackson. So they all appear to be here with a bunch of other kids who should be in school, delinquents, but this appears to be where they hustle their money, right? So you can see Raheem is playing pool. Steele is playing arcade games like betting with this young lady. And Q is selling his DJ mixtapes. So Q turns out to be a local DJ. Like, he scratches and everything. So he takes vinyls, makes a fire playlist, mixes for parties, and he sells them. So there's a young man who's interested in buying a playlist from him. And he tells him, yo, yesterday's price was 10, I'm going to have to do 15. And the gentleman is reluctant, but anyway, inadvertently, he ends up buying, right? Police pull up. Trip tells everybody to run. Everybody dashes except Steele. He's so involved in the arcade game, he doesn't even notice that the police are there. So the police grab him immediately. Raheem splits away from the group. Bishop and Q goes another direction. They're getting chased, they're jumping over fences. Bishop gets caught. Q helps Bishop because that's his boy. They escape, they're running from the police, they're going through buildings. They get to the roof somehow, right? And the police is like, all right, guys, you're on the roof. There's nowhere to go. Come on, bring it in. We're going to take you to school. But these are rebels. They're not about to get caught by the white man. They're not about to go in with the police. They're going to run for it because fuck the police, right? That's the thing. Write that down. That's going to be on the test later. So they dash off and they literally do a running jump off one building onto another adjacent building, and they make it. Mind you, this building is like stories up. Like if they missed, death, right? And the police are like, man, you guys are fucking nuts. Ain't no way in hell that we'd go and do that. But I'm not gonna lie, even I thought that until I really broke down that these are rebels without a cause, right? They're just refuse to be caught. They're chasing something, but the police aren't it. So any way to embarrass the police, they're gonna do it. Any way to not get caught, they're gonna do it because jail is not an option. They're not gonna do it, right? So they take Steele to school, right? The police do, and the gang regathers outside of the school. Steele breaks out of the school. They get back together and they're leaving, right? They're laughing it off. I still got caught. And Steele notices a DJ competition poster. And Q is like, oh shit, there's a competition. I'm the hottest DJ around. I'm going to try out. And Steele points out that, yo, DJ, Pete Rock and stuff is going to be there. And Q's like, well, what does that mean? And Steele is like, I mean, you're good, but you're local. These are like legit winners from last year. And Q is like, so y'all are doubting me? You don't think I can do it? And everybody else is laughing but Raheem. And Raheem lets him know, yo, you're my favorite local DJ, but I do believe you could do it, essentially. So they leave there. As they're walking down the street, still laughing, not a care in the world, Raheem tells Q, hey, before we go to Steelhouse to get something to eat, could you go into this bar and get me some cigarettes? Q's like, whatever, man, we'll go. So, actually, let me back up. I skipped a part. So, realizing that Q wants to audition for the competition, he asked the group, yo, can y'all help me get some vinyls to audition for this thing? Raheem's like, hell yeah, we'll do it, So, they leave and they go to the record store, right? Where they're selling vinyls, tapes, and stuff. And they're running a scam. What they're going to do is they're going to use Quincy's handsomeness to distract the owner while the rest of the crew steals vinyls for Quincy to make an audition tape. So he's talking to this lady. She turns around and she's less than attractive with a big ass gold tooth. And he's just engaging her while they're stealing. And they successfully do it. And as they're backing out, she realizes it's a jig. She realizes she's got. And they just leave out. So next, since Raheem did that for Q, Raheem wants a favor back. He's like, okay, go get me some cigarettes. Cool, I can do that for you. Stole me some vinyls. So Quincy goes into the place, gets some cigarettes. He gets them, and he notices an old acquaintance by the name Blizz. Blizz is just posted up, just watching the crowd. Like, it looks like he's listening to the music, but in actuality, Blizz is scoping the joint, right? So Q says, what's up, Blizz? Like, man, where have you been? I heard you were locked up. He was like, yeah, man, I just got off of parole a few days ago. He was like, how's your crew doing? He was like, yeah, the crew's outside if you want to come say what's up. Everybody's outside. Blizz is like, I'm finna rob this motherfucker, so hold this for me real quick. And he pulls out a shotgun and says, everybody put your hands up. This is a stick up, essentially. Quincy is stunned – that this man in mid-conversation starts to rob this place. And Bliss turns to Q and says, "Yo, you want some of this action?" Quincy's like, "Nah, I'm good." He backs out slowly and leaves. The crew is outside just laughing and talking, and Quincy's a bit disturbed. He's like, "Yo, Blizz is in there right now, sticking this bitch up." And they're like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, he's in there robbing the places we speak." And Bitch was like, "Oh, we in there. Let's go get some of the action." Raheem stops him. He's like, "Oh, hell no. What you don't know is that motherfucker's just finna go down, and we're not gonna be any part of it. I'll be damned if I let any one of us go down like that." And Bishop is pleading. He's like, "No, man, we can get money. There's so much that can be done. You know what we could do with that kind of money?" Raheem is like, "No, it's done. It's dead. Let's go." Reluctantly, they all leave. Bishop is disturbed. He's pissed. So they go to Steele's house. Steele is cooking some bullshit for him. Some eggs, bacon, and bologna, it look like, or something. And they're watching this movie. It's an old, I didn't know what the name of the movie is, but they're watching this movie, and it's clearly a prisoner who's rioting in prison, and he's evading the police, but he starts an uprising, but sacrifices himself rather than get arrested. He literally dies in a fiery explosion. And Bishop is like hype. He's quoting the young man, and he's just like, it's like how we reacted when Captain America said, "On your left," or when Falcon said, "On your left," or it's the equivalent of fanboying, is what Bishop was doing. He was totally immersed, kind of like how we were talking about earlier, how that escapism blurs into their sense of reality and you become delusional a little bit. So the movie ends, and Bishop is on like a monologue saying how if you're gonna go out, that's how you're supposed to go out. That's how you do it. You go out on your own terms. You take your destiny into your own hands. And if everybody gotta go, you go in the blaze of glory too. And they're not feeling that. Nobody really agrees with him. Still feels it's silly. And Bishop throws an underlying threat. He was like, "I control your life more than you do." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And Bishop is like, "I'm letting you live, ain't I?" And people just pass it off. They're like, "Whatever, man." Still says you can't even go down your block without getting assaulted by Rodimus. What are you even talking about? And so Bishop is then interrupted by a news flash that Blizz, who was just holding up that shop, was shot and killed in the middle of that robbery because he refused to get arrested by the police. He went down just like that. And they're downtrodden because their friend is dead. And Bishop, in a daze, is looking out the window and he sees Rodimus harassing other people, another guy, and robbing them. And he was like, "We just a bunch of punks, man." And Q was like, "What are you talking about?" He was like, "We should have been there with Blizz because we could have. He would have had our help. We'd be just like him. We'd have more juice. People would respect us. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of running from Rodimus, from Guilez, from the police. I'm just tired of running. All we do is run. Nobody respects us." And Q was like, "What the fuck? If we were there with Blizz, nigga, we'd be dead too." And he's like, "I'd much rather go out like that than be a punk like you." And Q is like, "The fuck are you talking about?" So he stands to him. They get into a scuffle. Q pushes him into a vase and it breaks. And Steele is freaking out because, they're supposed to be in school, but now there's furniture broken. And Raheem steps up and is like, "Hey, yo, that's it. We squashing this shit. Y'all niggas shake hands, and that's it. We dead in it." They shake hands, and Tupac rolls his eyes. Right? We move on. Later on, Raheem is walking with the crew, and Raheem sees his baby mama getting in the car with a younger man in a really nice car. It looks like he has money. And Tupac leans in, well, excuse me, Bishop leans into Raheem's ear and says, I thought that was your woman. So they break up after that. Q is going on his own, to guess to relieve some stress. So Q pulls up at a random, really nice hotel or apartment looking building, rings the doorbell, and a really angry older black man shows up, middle aged, right? Maybe 35, 40, somewhere in there. And he just looks disgusted at Quincy. And he's like, Who the fuck are you? And he was like, Quincy, is Yolanda here? And so Yolanda answers the door. It's like, Hey, Quincy, come on in. So Quincy sits down, and this older gentleman, his name is Frank, sits down across from him, looking at him with disgust. And he's berating Q for his name because, according to Frank, Q is not as good as a name like Mustafa or you know, what he's doing. Classism. And so it's slowly unveiled that Frank is Yolanda's ex-husband, right? And Quincy is dating Yolanda. Yolanda is a grown woman. Mind you, Quincy's a high schooler. Yeah, yeah. Pedophilia. Anywho, she kicks out Frank. Quincy and Yolanda kiss and they have sex. Alright. It's gross. It's even identified that this is wrong because Frank even makes the comment that I know you want to save the youth, but this is taking it a little far. Anyway, Yolanda fucks a minor. She says she's got to get ready to leave for work. So Quincy starts to head back home. Raheem meets him on the step of his apartment building. He's like, Hey, yo, I was meeting you to tell you that we're meeting tomorrow morning. There's a meeting. And Quincy, realizing that he's going to really audition for this DJ competition, says, I can't. I have to make it to the audition because I'm really going to try out. And Raheem was like, All right, man, well, I'll let the rest of the crew know, but make sure you come after the audition. Quincy agrees, and Raheem stops and says, Hey, man, good luck. And Quincy's kind of taken aback because expressions of love isn't, or support isn't exactly what men do. So for Raheem to be that vulnerable with him kind of shows why Raheem is seen as the leader and respected as the leader. Quincy goes inside and then he takes the vinyls that they collected and he makes his audition tape. It's a pretty cool scene if you want to watch some early footage of like scratching. It's really basic, but it's pretty cool if you want to YouTube it. So he goes to the audition the next day, right? And it's hosted by or judged by Queen Latifah. And she plays his tape. She compliments him on it, and she also cracks the joke that he's local. So turns out he makes it to the competition. He's in. So he goes back excited to meet the gang, but on the way, he sees Trip from the pool hall. And he's like, What's up, Trip? And Trip is talking to a young lady, so he's about to leave. And Trip says, Hey, yo, congratulations on making the audition. And Quincy's like, How the fuck did you know? I just left there. And he was like, Hey, man, ear to the streets, baby. Okay, cool. Remember that. That comes back later. So he goes and meets the gang, and Bishop and Steele are there. And he was like, Hey, yo, what's up? And he was like, Hey, man, what you doing tomorrow night? He was like, I got to go to this competition. I made it in. And he was like, Oh, that's too bad because it's on. Chris is like, What you talking about? I said it's on, Bishop replies. And Cute Steele is like, What is this nigga talking about? Steele says, We're going to rob old man Quiles. And he's like, Huh? He's like, Yeah, tomorrow night we're going to rob old man Quiles. He was like, Hey, yo, I got this competition tomorrow. I'm not finna miss that. And he was like, Nigga. And before he starts, Raheem runs up. And he's like, Hey, man, let's go in the alleyway. I want to talk to y'all. So they go in the alley, and Raheem shows up and shows that he has a 38 special. And Bishop takes it, and everybody's amazed over the gun, and they discuss the plan to rob old man Quiles. And Q's not feeling it. He feel like this is a half-assed idea. He was like, Hey, man, I don't think this is a good idea. And Bishop is just berating him for being afraid, challenging his manhood. And Raheem is playing the peer pressure. See, this is the twofold side of it. Raheem is a great leader for empathy, but he's also reinforces the negative stereotypes of black men falling into the tropes. He knows how to manipulate his group, telling them it's easy as pie. They know that there's a 3 minute overlap. We knock it out in 10 minutes. And since you have to have your DJ competition, we could use that as an alibi should anything go on. And Quincy's like, man, I don't know, bro. And Bishop yells out in one of the most famous lines ever, this nigga scared. It's hilarious. Go and watch the scene. It's fucking funny. So Quincy agrees. And so we jump to the next night. It's competition night. Quincy's in there. You could tell he's nervous, so he's just practicing, like, scratching, but he's in a daze. And Raheem, Steele, and Bishop walk in, and they wish him good luck. Right? Quincy goes up, and he does his set. And he beats the guy. You could tell the way it's shot that he beat the guy. And so now's the time to go and do the hold up. So they go down, they leave, and while the rest of the tournament is going on for the scratch tournament, they go out to the place. They have on masks. Bishop has the gun. They walk in. They hold up old man Quiles. They get the money. Police roll by, so they have to hide, but they're still holding him up. And so they say, yo, it's all clear. We can get by. And as they're leaving, Bishop, while still holding the gun on old man Quiles, shoots old man Quiles in the head. No reason behind it. He just does it. And I think it was for the thrill of it. Bishop has officially crossed over into that territory where there's no coming back. Right? So they run because who the fuck doesn't hear a gunshot? They run. They stop at this little alleyway and they gather their breath. They make sure they're clear. And Raheem and Q run up on Bishop and like, what the fuck was that? Why the fuck you shoot him? And he was like, he moved. And Steele was like, no, the fuck he didn't. We saw you. You just shot him for no reason. And Raheem continues to press Bishop and is like, motherfucker, give me the gun. Bishop was like, nah. And Raheem, in a mindset of, how dare you challenge me, rose up to Bishop, was like, give me the fucking gun. Bishop pulls the gun on Raheem. It's like, nah, I ain't doing shit. They get into a scuffle. They wrap up. Bishop throws off Raheem and shoots him in the chest. Everybody is stunned because Bishop just shot the leader. Someone living up top hears the gunshot. Yeah, hey, yo, what was that? And so they start to call the police, and everyone else runs. Q and Steele runs. Bishop turns back around to Raheem's body as he's bleeding out and starts grabbing the money. And before Bishop could leave, Raheem grabs his hand and stares at him like, I want to say, like, gives him a death stare. Like, it isn't even how could you. It's like, I'll see you soon type of vibe. It's so, it would sear into my brain. I would never forget that. It would be traumatic to me. Anywho, they meet up at another location. It's Bishop, Q, and Steele. And Steele is bawling his eyes out. He can't take it. He just witnessed 2 murders in the same night. Q is asking him, what the fuck is wrong with him? Why is he bugging out like this? Why you just killed Raheem, our friend? And Bishop is like, well, he tried to, come at me. Why'd he do that? He should know better. He should have known better. And this is where the delusion, I believe, fully takes over on Bishop. And Bishop starts to threaten him and is like, well, we just got to keep our story together. Otherwise, I might have to kill you too. And so he tells Steele, who's still crying, come here so he could hold him and offer, like, comfort. But how can you give comfort after you just killed 2 people in the same night and one of them was your best friend? So Steele is obviously shook. So they decide, well, Bishop decides that we're going to go back to the location. We're going to uphold our alibi. And if anybody else, Raheem left us and went to go kick it with a female. They go to the competition, and before Quincy can even get his set, police investigators show up and they call him down. And he just goes down, and Bishop leans in, playing a part, saying, "Hey, somebody killed Raheem. They think we did it." So they go down, and that's where they show into the interrogation, where the police are interrogating each one of them separately. Quincy is kind of dead to it. It's like he's in disbelief, like he's not even there. Steele is still bawling, crying, letting them know, like urging them that he's innocent. He ain't have nothing to do with it, and they're just harassing him, beating up on the kid, trying to get him to crack, but they don't snitch. However, Bishop's interrogation goes really different. Bishop is performing as if he's acting. He tells them this bogus story about how he wasn't there and how he was caught up to an old girlfriend, and he's loving and relishing the moment because I think he realizes that he's about to get away with not only one murder but two. And he feels untouchable because he knows his alibi is rock solid because nobody can prove that he was with Raheem other than at that party. And Raheem is the only body that wasn't there. So they get released, and we jump skip to Raheem's wake. Q and Steele are sitting next together and can't eat. Q's mother is urging him to eat, and he's just sick being surrounded with Raheem's family members and his sister and mom. And Q goes up to Raheem's sister, and he introduces himself, and they hug, and he's just expressing how sad he is and how he fucked up he thinks this is. And Bishop sees him talking to her. Bishop just watches quietly from the corner. Then Raheem's mom walks up, and Quincy is talking to her. Bishop walks up and interrupts and says, "Hi, I can't even remember what his real name, but he doesn't even go by Bishop. Roland." He says, "I'm Roland. I, was his friend from childhood, and we were brothers. And I don't know who did it, but I hope they find him." And they hug. He hugs Raheem's mom, and as he does it, he's staring at Quincy as if to say, "Yeah, nigga, I could kill you and go and console your mom and think nothing of it." Bishop is a sociopath at this point. That boy is far gone. So they leave there. Q's shown at home, sitting there looking at his consolation prize, which is a boombox radio, which he never really wanted because it means nothing to him, right? Everything is up in the air. And so he's sitting there talking to his brother, and he hears Bishop call for Q outside his window. And Bishop tells his brother, "Yo, if you ever see him and he asks for me, just tell him I'm not here," right? So Quincy is on the route of like avoiding Bishop at all costs. So we flash forward to Quincy going back to school. He's in his locker, he's looking at a book, and someone makes the comment, "Damn, it's been that long?" And Quincy, on edge, threatens the guy. And as Quincy shuts the locker door, there's Bishop. Bishop is staring at him, trying to read Quincy. Is like, "What's up?" And Q is defensive, is like, "What's up?" Bishop is like, "Nigga, we hood, like we crew. We supposed to be click tight. Where you been at? I ain't been able to get to you." He was like, "Yeah, I've been busy." He was like, "Busy? Ain't nobody bigger than the crew, bro. So what's up?" Quincy stops playing the game. He's like, "You know what? The only reason I'm playing your little game is so we could keep this going. But you threaten me again, and it's up, essentially." And Bishop is impressed. He says, "Oh, okay. All bets are off now." Everything starts from now. You either get in line or you lay down, right? So Bishop is fully embracing the idea that I don't have to front like I care about you anymore, right? I'm just telling you what it is. Obey me, like the leader that I self proclaim am, or suffer the consequences. And Quincy looks at him and says, "Hey, bro, you're crazy." This is the second time that Quincy has called Bishop crazy. First time was when they fought at Steele's house. And Bishop looks at him and says, "You know, the first time you said that, I was bugging. But you know what? I am crazy. And you know what else? I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about you. I don't give a fuck about Steele. And I don't give a fuck about Raheem either. Fuck, I don't give a fuck about myself. I ain't shit, and I ain't never gonna be shit. And you less of a man than me. So anytime that I decide that you are less than me, pow." He essentially tells him that all of this is for nothing. I don't care about any of this shit. And at any point in time, you can go. And it's one of the hardest line reads from Tupac I ever got. It's also the most chilling, right? So he basically takes the full veil off. It's no holding back. So Bishop later gets caught alone with Radames, and they take Bishop outside the pool hall and they jack him up. And at the same time, Steele and Q were talking, walking and talking, and Steele is telling him how afraid of Bishop he is, telling him how like Bishop is having these monologues, talking about how ain't nobody gonna fuck with him, and everybody know he's got the juice, and it's scaring him. And so they bend the corner, and they see Bishop being held up by Radames, and Steele starts to go and save Bishop because that's what they would normally do. Quincy stops Steele and says, "Nah, let's go." So they leave, and Bishop feels the betrayal. It's solidified. That's when the wall is created. So at this point, he realizes it's just him. So he fights. The police break it up. Everybody scatters. Right? He hit the corner. He follows Radames. Radames is alone in the alleyway, and he follows up behind him and says, "I think we lost him." Radames turns around shocked, and Bishop shoots and kills Radames. Bishop has killed Old Man Quiles, Raheem, and now Radames. All right. So at this point, Q realizes that he fucked up. So Steele asks him, is like, "Yo, do you think Bishop saw us?" And Q says, "Yeah, I think he did." Q then goes to meet a local gun runner to buy a gun. He has $25. He feels he needs protection from Bishop because he knows it's up now. He knows he's an enemy. He gives this young lady named Sweets $25. She goes into the refrigerator. She pulls out a 22. She gives it to him. What makes this scene also uncomfortable is that she looks at him and she tells him who his mother is. And she says, as she's loading the gun, "Tell your mama Jackie said hi." It goes to show that black people, no matter how far apart we are, somebody always knows you, right? Somebody always knows your startings, your beginnings, who you used to be. Like somebody always knows who you're attached to. People will talk, right? And that's going to come back in a second. So Bishop continues to spiral. He catches Steele off guard as he's trying to go home. And he tells Steele to come with him, and he acquiesces as normal because he's a follower. And he follows Bishop. So Q goes to meet Yolanda as he's trying to vent about Raheem, and he's not eating dinner, and he tells Yolanda he might know who killed Raheem, and she freaks out. She's like, "Well, you should tell the police." And he was like, "No, I can't." And she's just like, "Is it because you're involved?" He was like, "I didn't do it." And so at that point, somebody calls the house. It's Steele calling from the pool hall asking for Quincy. Steele asks Quincy to come down to the pool hall because he's afraid for his life. He's scared of Bishop. He's tripping. Bishop overhears him talking. It's like, "Who the fuck are you talking to?" He takes the phone, puts it to his ear, and he hears silence. and Bishop knows it's Q. So Q leaves, and he's like, "Yo, I'll get up with you later. I gotta go find Steele. His life is in danger." So Bishop, pissed off, leads Steele to like a secluded area. Say, "Yo, I just want to talk. Let's talk about this." And he was just like, "I just feel like shit is different, and I feel like y'all ain't crew with me no more." And he pulls out a gun on Steele, and Steele just like in a moment of just like being done, he lashed out and he's like, "Don't you get sick of this shit? What do you want from me?" And Bishop says nothing and shoots Steele. Bishop then goes to town hall to meet with Tripp, knowing that Tripp is got his ears to the street. He can peddle information, and he tells him that Quincy has been off in the last while. That's why he hadn't been around, and he kind of scares him ever since this thing with Raheem. Quincy's been acting a little crazy, and to protect myself, I might have to off him. You know what I mean? He's basically gaslighting everybody to make it seem like if something happens and he kills Quincy, it's justified, right? So Q goes to the pool hall looking for Steele. He's not there. He goes to Steele's house. He's not there. Q then sees Steele getting loaded up into an ambulance. It turns out he survived the gunshot. So Q, realizing that he's next, starts to walk away from the crowd, but he's spotted and noticed the police chased after him. So Q runs away from the police. He makes his way back to the pool hall. Tripp finds him in his office, and Q asks him, yo, I heard that you're the one who killed Radames, Quiles, and maybe even shot Raheem. And Q tells him, he's like, "Yo, you know me since I was a kid. I would never do that stuff." And Tripp is like, "I've known many a killer since I was a kid, since he was kids, bro." And so he was like, "Okay, man, look, I won't ask nothing from you, but will you tell Bishop to meet me by the Hudson at midnight?" He does. So Q goes there with his gun, and he realizes he's not going to use his gun to shoot Bishop. He's not going to kill Bishop. They was friends. He's not going to sink to that level. That's never been his shit. So he throws his gun in the river, and Bishop sees him. Bishop opens fire and chases him. They're running through downtown, New York, and he gets shot in the arm. Bishop shoots Quincy in the arm. So he runs through these apartments. He runs through a party, and with all that many people, it's less likely that Bishop would fire on him because it would implicate him. So Quincy gets on the elevator to get away from Bishop, and Bishop enters the elevator at the last time. The elevator's full of people. And so Quincy realizes he's trapped, and Bishop is death staring at him. And so Quincy is like, "What you gonna do, shoot me on the elevator?" Bishop tries to shoot Quincy on the elevator. The people on the elevator push Bishop out. They run. Quincy runs to the roof. Bishop follows him, and he's looking for him. Bishop leaps out with a pipe. He's beating up Bishop. They're fighting, punching. The gun drops. People are watching them fight. Somebody picks up the gun. And as they're fighting, Quincy hits Bishop. Bishop, falls over the edge of the building, but Quincy catches him. And Quincy's like, "I got you, man. Hold on." And Bishop is saying, "Q, don't let me go." And Quincy's like, "You slipping. I can't hold on." He's like, "Q, please, don't let me go." And you see Bishop's hand slip out of Quincy's hand, and Bishop falls to his death screaming. And it's sad. And Quincy is just distraught because he's lost almost everybody out of his crew. Bishop is dead. Raheem is dead. Steele has been shot. And it turns out Steele went to a hospital where Yolanda works. And Steele has informed Yolanda that Bishop was the one who killed everyone. Right? So as Quincy is walking away from the roof, the crowd is like getting out the way because they're terrified of him because he just killed Bishop. And according to the rumor that Bishop spread, Quincy was behind everything. So the young man who picked up the gun was the young man who bought a mixtape from Quincy. And the young man stops him and say, "Hey man, you got the juice now." And Quincy's like, "No, nigga." He don't says it. He doesn't have any words. He just shakes his head and he starts to walk off. And the movie cuts back to the memory of that moment where Raheem, Steele, Bishop, and Q were walking off after they was janking Steele, and Bishop says "Wrecking Crew," and the movie ends. And yeah, you might be saying, "Well, that's a pretty good ending." You know, he's is remembering what they were before and the tragedy of what power can do, what the juice is, because essentially, just like the poster says, this whole movie is just a allegory for respect and power, something that these young men feel like they never had. And let's talk about that for a second. With this ending, the way Bishop died was he fell to his death fearing for his life, reaching to his friend, saying, "Yo, please don't let go of me. Please don't give up on me." It's a contrast to what Bishop had said earlier that, "Yo, I don't give a fuck about any of you. I don't give a fuck about life." In that ending, it contradicted what he really believes, which, although it's a contradiction, it is realistic. Because a lot of us who says, we don't give a fuck about life actually do. That we just don't know how to convey it, right? And I believe they chose that ending for that reason. They wanted to show that even the hardest, most villainous, most charismatic villain still wants to live. Now, you might be wondering why I said that ending. That's because I found out there's an alternate ending. Yeah. The original ending is slightly different. The movie is the entire same. The ending premise is the same. The only difference is when Q hits Bishop and he goes over the edge and Q is holding on to Bishop, he has a good grip. Right? He's about to pull up Bishop. Bishop isn't saying anything. Bishop says, finally, "I can't go to jail, man." And Q says, "What are you talking about? I don't want you, don't punk out on me now." Because Q realizes that Bishop doesn't want to make it out of this. He's holding true to what he saw in that movie. This is the ending that Bishop wanted, right? He says he can't go to jail because that's what happened to his father. His father was rendered catatonic. His father lost all respect that he had. There was rumors of his father being gay. He thought that potentially happening to him was worse than running away from the police, worse than living to fight another day, worse than living, period. He thought jail was worse than death. So in that moment, he scratches Quincy's hand and he falls to his death, not saying a word. That ending, I feel, is more a commentary that I feel like we should have got than the original theatric ending. I think we needed to realize that the way we celebrate some of these extremist ideals, we need to understand that some people are hopelessly lost, right? I don't think fear is a concern for everyone. And with the way that the theatrical ending occurred for Bishop, I think that's a more humanistic style, like a more realistic take on what would probably happen. But for the sake of its message that it had been breadcrumbing this whole movie of Bishop being a sociopath, Bishop wanting to go out in this blaze of glory, and he does it. He sticks to it to the end. He sees jail as a failure. It's like that ending to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? Like would this why would life like this be acceptable? Even in hell, Shutter Island, like that moment of clarity where you realize, is it better to live as a monster failing or to die a legend? And he chose his route. He refused to go to jail. He would not want to see himself be defeated by going to prison and being scarred for life, being a shell of the man he once was. And I think that ending held more weight than the theatrical ending. Yeah. But yeah, that's the Indigo Juice. That's what I thought. I love the fact that while doing this script and reviewing the movie, that I came across that ending so casually. It was amazing and enlightening, and I just wish that. I wonder if on the Blu-ray or DVD that it gives you the chance to view the alternate ending, and I think it leaves a lot of discussion on the idea of these charismatic villains because yes, we got the villain, and the movie is cemented in history forever. Rest in peace, Tupac. But the character of Bishop intentionally was written differently than the one we got, and I always think that's interesting. Anyway, this has been your boy, Sir. I appreciate this. Give this a like if you watched it to the end. Leave me some comments. Let me know who are some black crime drama uh, characters that you were in. If I do another one, I will say I will be doing Nino Brown because I think he was super interesting in New Jack City. Wesley Snipes did an amazing job. But yeah, I've been talking for an hour straight and my mouth is dry. So you be great and thank you.